being in the water is part of the rhythm of my life. It's quite unexplainable. I mean, the feeling of ducking through that first wave and then that timelessness, I suppose. And, you know, it's 6:30 in the morning and you pop up and it could be any time of the day. So your whole body shifts and changes with that immersion. In a sense that, like with making artwork, you can never do it twice. You can never do it again. That's a moment in time. And I think when you're on a wave, there's a moment in time there that can't be recreated again. So you have to sort of be right in the moment, and you have to respond to that situation in a way that's really familiar, because you've done it thousands of times, but yet each time is new again. I think I first knew I was going to be an artist when I was at art school, and just realising there was a real love there for it. I know it sounds a bit wishy-washy. Ironically, I only did art in my final years at school because I failed all my other subjects because I was too busy playing rugby and mucking around and surfing. And art became quite a salvation in many ways. I mean, you know, the art teachers took me under their wings. They saw that I had an energy. I wasn't one of the top art students, and I never was. But those people who may get the most out of making art are not always, you know, the people who are best at drawing. It's something a lot deeper than that. You've got to have a drive, and that's where that love for it is really important.
Well, in terms of Ngāi Tahu culture, when I think about Simon Kaan, I think about that idea of identity and articulation of identity. Simon's work, I've followed him for a long time, and his work's very interesting insofar as it started off in the early days. It seemed like he was trying to capture what his identity was. But as time mellowed and his works changed, I could see more of his storytelling of being Ngāi Tahu in there. So when I think about what Simon's work brings is that sense of identity, that sense of feeling, that sense of connection. You can see his whakapapa in his works.
The conversation that I'm creating for myself is a conversation that's relevant to a lot of people. And I think a lot of Ngāi Tahu and a lot of Māori and a lot of other ethnic groups around positioning ourselves, and how do we do that? Looking at my work, you know, the fact that it's positioned with a lot of water, you know, and that immersion, those multiple horizons, those subtle elements amongst that, and that positioning in the South Pacific that I'm not consciously researching or thinking about daily. It's just who we are.
Being an artist from Dunedin, you can actually see a distinct Dunedin flavour in what he's doing. So he melds that idea of time and place of where he is, responding to where he is, but also bringing that into that who he is. So it's a combination of both place and person and history, whakapapa, that he's bringing together all at once. So I believe that Simon responding to the landscape of this place, to the waters that he's in, to the mountains that surround him, informs what he does, informs his own identity, and it informs his art practice.
It's a really interesting arts community that's been here for a long time. Even being influenced, you know, by artists like Ralph Hawtori when I was growing up. You know, he just lived around the road, used to come into the fruit shop, and, you know, when I was a kid, and Dad would have yarns with him, and so, you know, being part of that continuum is kind of cool and really relevant, and something I feel quite attached to. The aesthetic in my work is very much Chinese influenced. The peacefulness, the calm, the floating nature of it all derives from a lot of Chinese philosophy with their landscape painting. In saying that, you know, the landforms that I'm using come from here because this is where I was born. Yet when I look at a lot of the Chinese landscape paintings, they're there as well, which gets me thinking a little bit more about the universal nature of land, which those Chinese artists traditionally were engaged with in the same way as Māori, we think about whenua here. Really similar, the spiritual nature of it. The way that the mist rolls in through the hills and down through landscapes, and that relationship between the moisture and the relationship between water and landform.
Run from the culture, away from the belly of fear.
I was just looking at those wingtips that I started working on maybe 15 years ago. And it wasn't until in some of the rock art sites a couple of years ago that I was sitting in situ in the caves looking at some of those drawings and then going, oh my God, there are those wingtips, or there are those rhythms and those forms that I've been working with. It's nice just to be able to have a place for them. So it's like repositioning them onto the work from those caves. So it's reworking it, recontextualizing it. There's a real beauty in those lines and those drawings and the rock art, and if I can even come close to anything like that, I'll be winning. It's that thing that's not grounded, it's sort of something sort of spiritually that's quite mystic, which I think, hopefully this work is kind of like that. It's quite timeless. There's no figures in there. There are often no real time references. It could be something from thousands of years ago. It could be something in thousands of years' time. The actual production of the work is quite frantic. I work on multiple pieces at once, often up to 8 works happening at once on different, I'll be printing and painting at the same time. I'll be working on some large scale works, some small works. The place is kind of fairly chaotic. I'm quite an impatient artist, and it's kind of like a dust storm in here. It's like, and then once the dust settles, that's when the product sits and resides after that, and there's that settling, and there's the final work at the end of it.
When I think about Simon's art and the places that it comes from, the evolution of his identity, you can see it through the art. You can see where Simon is reflecting on himself and where he comes from, and from his multiple lines of whakapapa, and bringing those together at certain times in certain pieces. And it's beautiful to see these things actually moulding together and melding together, telling that wonderful story of who he is.
In this world, which is, there's a lot of chaos and there's a lot of fast-moving, fast-paced, non-stop elements to it. And I think people really do need a pause in their life. And this artwork, for me, gives me that pause and that breath and that time to do that. And so for people who engage with the work, I think, a lot of people are hoping a lot of people get that from that work as well. And that's, a bit of solitude amongst that, but also some peace. So I'm really happy that that people can engage and do engage in that way. I think it's a real, I see it as a real privilege to be doing this work for that reason.
He mea tau toko nā te manga.
Ngāi Tahu.